Hi, everyone. Welcome to our live call from Iraq. We're really excited tonight to beam in all the way from where we are in Iraq to wherever you are in the world in an effort to hopefully update you about some of the amazing things going on here, things that you've made possible through your generous contributions, through your advocacy, through your kindness, the way you read and keep up with what's going on here. We just wanted to give you a chance to kind of hang out with us here in our office. It's about 8 o'clock on a Friday night here in Iraq. Not sure where you are, but we're really honored that you chose to spend some time, maybe over your lunch break, to join us here. If you have other friends who weren't able to make it, this will be archived and saved on our website so that you can watch it, send it. You can leave halfway through and catch the back half later on. We'll spend about an hour together here tonight talking about various topics, debuting some new videos that we've never gotten to show before, and hosting some of your questions and getting into hopefully a bit of a dialogue. So thanks so much for joining us. Many of you are new. We've been really blessed with a huge influx of donors and friends and advocates that have come alongside us in the last 2 months. And because so many of you are new, and because of the ways in which you came to us, namely when the city of Ramadi fell to ISIS in the middle of May, we've recognized that some of you don't know our backstory. You don't know where we're coming from. You don't know what we were doing in Iraq prior to all this. You may have heard about us through a blog post or a news article. And so your entry point into where we are and what we're doing lacks maybe a little bit of the context that we would love for you to have today. And so we just want to spend a few minutes at the top introducing you to where we've been, who we are, and where we're going from here. So our work in Iraq began nearly 10 years ago. We had moved into the country in the middle of the civil war, the Iraq War, the last time this country saw violence on the level of what we're seeing here now. And it was kind of in that context that we were going about our business, trying to help people where we could find them. And one day, sitting in a hotel, minding our business, we had this opportunity to help one little girl. This shy guy in the cafe approached me and asked if we would help his cousin, told me about his little girl who was born with a huge hole in her heart, and said there wasn't a doctor or a surgeon left in the entire country of Iraq, no hospital that could treat her, no one to save her life. And said, you're an American, you've obviously come here to help. Is there anything you can do to help me and my cousin and this little girl that we love so much? And so one thing led to another, and we jumped in, we threw all of our weight and our resources behind this one family to see what we could do to help them save their little girl's life. One thing led to another, and we found out that this little girl wasn't alone. She wasn't the only child in Iraq suffering from a life-threatening heart defect. In fact, soon we became aware of hundreds and then thousands, maybe tens of thousands of kids across Iraq who needed these life-saving surgeries. And so my wife and Cody and a couple of friends, we all joined together and said, what can we do to throw our weight behind these kids and save as many of their lives as possible? And so on that day, the Preemptive Love Coalition was born, primarily, first off, to eradicate the backlog of children who were waiting in line for life-saving heart surgeries across Iraq. Now, this work has taken us all over the country, so we've been blessed to work in some of the hardest places of Iraq, providing life-saving medical care for children, training doctors and nurses so that they get the skills in their hands that they need to do these surgeries going forward for decades and decades into the future. I'm not going to go too much into our past beyond that. I just wanted to let you know why our website looks the way it does, why it's a little bit outdated. It hasn't been able to keep up with all the new work that we're doing in this post-ISIS reality in Iraq. And so if you joined us 2 months ago or 2 minutes ago because of hearing about ISIS or hearing about our work in some of the hardest places delivering aid and things like that to people, and you wonder why our website is full of heart surgeries and full of kids, that's just a little bit of context for why we are in the place we're in and where we've come from to get here. So to help facilitate that a little bit more, to help you get your mind around that story a little bit more, I want to just tell you what we're going to do for you today if you're on this call. We're going to give you the chance to receive a free book. It's going to be the easiest way that we can help you get acquainted with our story and know more about what's going on here and where we've come from and how we got to this place. So if you're a donor, that means you're in our list, and we have your email address and we have your physical address, your mailing address, and we want to send you a copy of this book. It's the best way to kind of tell you the backstory in full, and to go beyond the heart surgeries and really let you know what we're about at our core is more than just helping bodies. It's more than just helping one kid here or there who needs a heart surgery. The thing that we've learned over and over again with these heart surgeries is that we have this amazing chance to wage peace, to bring people back together. Sending one child to a doctor who might be considered an enemy, and watching that enemy doctor save your child's life has had a net effect of just being very, very positive all across communities here in this region. So we're going to send that book to you. The only thing you need to do to get on that book list is to make sure you've donated at some point, and that we have your information on hand. We have the mailing address that we need from you. So that is yours. We'll recap that again at the end of the broadcast. Moving forward beyond that offer, though, we want to make sure that we use this time well in updating you about the things that you've helped us accomplish here across the country. Since those early days of providing life-saving heart surgeries to children, things here in Iraq have changed considerably. Not only did our work grow, we grew beyond just helping one kid here or there, but we actually saw a massive geographic expanse to our work. We were invited by governors and mayors all over the country to come and bring these life-saving services to where they live. And then, last year, as many of you sat up and paid attention, maybe for the first time, to this growing threat called ISIS, you became aware for the very first time about terrorism that was besetting Iraq. And it was something that we were living through here in this moment in Iraq. And we started seeing the streets fill up with people who were displaced by ISIS, people who had been pushed out of their homes, people who now no longer had a place to live. And 3 million people over the last couple of months, nearly a year, have been pushed out of their homes. And as that has happened, we have been in a position where we've had to give aid, food, shelter, carpet, clothing, heat for winter, all these kinds of things that people need when they're completely out of their element and driven from their homeland. Let me fix this one. I've got a problem going on here, apparently. Sorry about that. So one of the things that we launched last year around this time is we had 8 interns here in our office, and this ISIS thing was raging on in a way that was extremely disconcerting, and we didn't know what was going to happen to the team, to the interns, and most importantly, I guess at that time, we were surrounded by all these people who were in dire need and had come just out of the desert where ISIS was slaughtering people en masse. And so we had largely been a heart surgery organization up until that point. We found ourselves saying, how can we respond to these people who are coming into our neighborhood and coming up to us every day and asking for help? And so we launched with this photo, in many ways, this Love First campaign, this thing where we said, we want to jump in and help these people. We don't know all the answers. We don't have this whole thing figured out yet. No, we're not an aid organization properly. We don't have any expertise in getting aid to the hardest parts of Iraq. But what we do have is nearly a 10-year reputation in this country, partnerships and goodwill and friends all over. And this is something more valuable than money. This is more valuable in some places than just the skill alone. And so based on our reputation and our network, we started reaching out and seeing what we could do to reach out of the safe havens into some of the hardest parts of Iraq. And those are some of the stories that we want to share with you today, because that's what you've made possible. One of the early kids that we met was this kid, Ali. Ali came from Fallujah with his buddy, Muhammad. And Ali and Muhammad were these amazing little kids that we met out one day while we were giving food aid. Their families had been driven from Fallujah. In this case, a more complicated story than the ones that you probably heard. Most of what you've probably heard is that ISIS is the big bad guy in Iraq, and that's largely true. But Muhammad and Ali had actually been driven from their home not by ISIS proper, but by the Shia militia who came in to fight ISIS, and thereby drove the local population out, sometimes by committing grave atrocities in the process. And so Muhammad and Ali both were extremely scared of both sides. They were scared of the Sunni ISIS militants that had attacked so many of their people, and they were scared of the Shia militia and the Shia security forces that had come in ostensibly to liberate them. And so we received them for the very first time, delivering them food, just simple packets of food. And they were in a state as a family that you would never want to see a child in, living on the floor, living without doors or windows as winter was approaching, and it became very obvious that a few bags of food alone was not going to get the job done. They needed heat for winter. They needed a way to really have quality shelter. And as we reached out to this family and said, what is it that you need? How can we help you? One of the dads said, it's just my son. Take my son. He has a bad heart. And in the midst of all this physical suffering, having been driven from their home by ISIS and driven from their home by Shia militia, without food, blankets, heat, any of this stuff, chief on these dads' minds was the health of their kids and their heart. And we started telling them about our heart surgery program that we've been running for years across this country, and offered to get the children to surgery if they would trust us. And the one hitch was that we were going to have to send these Sunni boys to Shia surgeons to get their hearts healed. And you can imagine that this was like saying, well, we just need you to walk into the lion's mouth to be made well. And so these dads were naturally kind of resistant and concerned, but also passionate about saving the lives of their boys. And so reluctantly, over time and over some negotiation, we were able to assuage their fears. We were able to vouch for the character and the goodness and the skill of our Shia doctors that we work with. And so these guys agreed to get in this taxi right here that you can see and start their way to the airport. Now being displaced kids, they didn't have what they needed to even get on an airplane. Those documents had been left behind as ISIS and the militia came to town, and it took one sympathetic stewardess and a ticket agent to allow us to even buy that ticket. And there were so many of these amazing little miraculous moments that happened along their journey. When they arrived in Baghdad, they arrived at a security checkpoint. They weren't supposed to be let through, and seemingly miraculously, the taxi driver talked them through. When they arrived at the hospital, they weren't supposed to be let in the front gate, and the taxi driver said, oh, even though I live 9 hours from here, I actually know the guy. And so the taxi driver again negotiates this way for them to enter into what would soon be their healing. And so through work with various doctors, we were able to get these boys on the operating table and into the life-saving, hopefully what would be the life-saving heart surgeries that they needed. And their moms and greater family, the brothers and sisters and aunts and uncles, were still back at home living in these horrible conditions without the very basics of life that they needed. And as Ali in particular went through surgery, one of the things that we noticed about him is on the flip side of surgery, he started gaining weight so quickly. He started really getting healthier and looking significantly healthier. This heart defect that had affected him for so long, now that it was healed, wasn't going to hold him back anymore. It's kind of hard to tell from this picture, but this is a race that you're looking at right here. These boys both had their surgery at the same time, and they're trying to recover together, and they're racing down the hall to see who can make it to the finish line first. Shortly thereafter, we brought the boys back home to their camp, or their kind of makeshift community where they were living and where we've been helping them. And as Ali pulled into the sort of dirt area off the road, this little boy on a bicycle noticed him and said, oh, Ali's back, Ali's home, and kind of raced the taxi as fast as he could to get home. And when Ali pulled up to the front drive, this tremendous celebration let out. Mom comes out the door for the first time we've ever seen her do something like this, but comes out the door dressed in these beautiful, colorful clothes, happy to have her son back. Can you imagine sending your child away, 9-some hours away, like taxi through dangerous, dangerous land into the enemy's arms, just hoping that your child would come back well. So she burst through the gates with all the joy that you would expect of a mom receiving her son back, and the rest of the family just showered candy and sugar on him. It was the sweetest homecoming, one of the most beautiful things that we've seen in all of our years here. And this is just one of those improbable, unlikely things where a couple of boys who long had since given up on receiving the surgeries that they needed were driven out by ISIS. And it's like this thing, what ISIS meant for evil, it seemed that like God himself was working in the life of these boys that are good. And we were able to meet them right there in that moment and save their lives because of you. And so we wanted to update you on that story. This is a fairly recent picture of Ali. And man, I don't know if you can tell it where you are, but he's gained a lot of weight. And he's significantly healthier and happier. It's just a really exciting thing that we get to walk through with families like Ali here every day. Now, Ali lives in a relatively safe place now. He made it out of the hard spot and made it into these places that are a lot safer and more put together and organized. But that actually doesn't typify most of what we've got going on right now. Thanks to you and thanks to the influx of money and kindness and donations that you guys sent our way in May after the fall of Ramadi, we have been able to take your aid and your kindness to the hardest to reach places in Iraq, places that are far beyond what anyone else seems to be willing to do. And you have just so emboldened us and encouraged us to keep doing that. When you send us notes and you encourage us to keep going to the hard places, you can't imagine what an impact that has on us. And so this slide that you're looking at right now is a little outdated now. It says 3 miles from ISIS. The truth is we've actually been a lot closer than that now, thanks to you. But when we headed out about 15 miles past the last checkpoint into no man's land a couple of days, maybe about a week or two ago, we saw some of the most amazing things that any of our team has ever seen. Just squalor and danger and things that have been so difficult for those who were on the trip to even like stomach and know what to do with at times. Let me just recap you a little bit on that story, because this thing that we're engaged in right now really goes back to that May 17th, May 18th when Ramadi fell, and so many of you came on board for the very first time. We think we got about 9,000 new supporters during that period of time, and what you guys have made possible is just incredibly exciting to us. If you remember, ISIS had been chipping away at the city of Ramadi for months and months leading up to what eventually became known as the fall of Ramadi. And one of the reasons that this made international news was because as 100,000+ Sunni Iraqis fled for safety, they actually got cut off by the Baghdad ruling government and were trapped in the desert at this tiny little footbridge that they had to cross. You can only fit maybe 10 people across this bridge, and they were locked there. They couldn't cross the Euphrates River. They couldn't come into the safety of Baghdad without checking all these security boxes and having family and sponsors and all these things that many of them were unable to produce. And so international news crews started showing up and from the safety of Baghdad started showing these images of 100,000 people just trapped in the desert, just blocked out of Baghdad. So they were literally sandwiched between the Euphrates River that they couldn't cross and ISIS at their backs. And these were the very people who had rejected ISIS and fled and said, we want nothing to do with that. We want safety. And yet these people were still being punished in the desert. And so many of you had your hearts just utterly broken by that news coverage, and we certainly did. And so we've been reaching out, trying to figure out how do we get out there into the desert to help them. And so a couple of weeks ago, a few of our team piled in a car with our partners and drove out past the gates of Baghdad and drove through the desert and got to the last checkpoint and were stopped by Iraqi security forces who ultimately wouldn't let us in, probably because of the Americans on the team. And we're ultimately in a place where the Iraqis had to decide, are they going to accept the American, or are they going to reject us? And we were really inspired by the way that our Iraqi partners and friends stuck with us and pushed for us to get into that no man's land so that we could demonstrate our love with our own hands and our own presence, and really take your message of love and kindness to the people of Anbar in a way that no one else was doing. And so on the way out of that safe zone into no man's land, one of the final agreements was that basically the team had to renounce its rights to be rescued. If the team wanted to go forward, Iraqi security forces made it clear they weren't coming to rescue anybody. And so I was just so thrilled and pleased and honored by the way that our team led forward and pushed 15 miles into the desert, past other organizations, until there was no one left. There was no one out where we were, where thousands and thousands of people were dealing with conditions like these. So back to the slides, you'll see that one of the things we found is these kids who are just scratching by a living by carting supplies back and forth across the river. These are really vulnerable boys. I mean, there are ISIS-type people and ISIS recruiters and ISIS sympathizers moving in and among this crowd. And so these boys, disaffected, frustrated, barely able to make ends meet, rejected by the Shia government, rejected by Sunni ISIS, they're kind of in this really difficult situation, and we're concerned about these boys, and they're high on our priority list of kids that we're trying to figure out how to serve and how to push back against any of the extremist ideology that may be coming upon them. We will take doctors out with us into the desert in places that hadn't seen a doctor since they were dismissed and displaced by ISIS. This is the one water line coming into this entire camp of about 750 people where we were. Imagine one water line to serve 750 people. Or one bathroom. This is one bathroom that this entire camp seems to share. And so thanks to you, we're working very actively with the community leaders there and the tribal leaders and the government that technically should control that area to make sure that we can improve water flow, get more fresh water out into the desert, and to make sure that they have proper places where they can use the facilities and minimize any sense of the lack of hygiene that comes in this kind of situation. One of the things our doctor noticed when he was out there were cases of scabies, this horrible, horrible skin disease that results from not having good hygiene and not having the ability to bathe and wash properly. And then this is where they wash their dishes. I mean, many of these people were relatively middle class, not necessarily the most impoverished people out there. And imagine just going from a normal life like many of us share to sharing that one water line, that one bathroom, and having this as your kitchen sink that you share with 750 people. It's just been a very, very difficult thing for a lot of these people to go through. But thanks to you, you've made it such that help is really on the way. This is just a quick map just to show you visually where you've enabled us to make an impact over the last number of months. You can see buried, actually, at this altitude, it's hard to see the number of programs we've got going on, but we just want you to see that above that red line, if you meet anyone else or you hear anyone else tell you about their friend or their brother who's in Iraq right now, there's a great, great chance that they're above that red line in the northeast section of Iraq. But what we've found everywhere else we've gone in Iraq is that there are very precious few organizations who are showing up and endeavoring to help. And so we are just so grateful that you have helped us get out to these hard places with all the resources that you've provided us over the last couple of months. So just to run through a quick couple of numbers, you've helped us provide heat to 11,369 people during the winter last year. You've helped us provide carpet, 79,218 square feet of carpet, so that people, once they get out of the desert and settled into some kind of home, don't have to live on dirt floors. Can't tell you what an impact that makes in the heat or in the cold of winter to have a carpet that you can sit down on and not sit on cement floor, dirt floor, mud floor beneath a tent. One of the things that we're seeing over and over again is the way that ISIS uses food as a weapon in this war. ISIS is consistently stealing food aid or blocking aid or blockading entire cities so that they can't get the food and water that they need. And one of the strategies behind this is to lock off entire populations so that the only option the population has is to finally acquiesce and give in and properly join ISIS. And one of the things that we've just been saying everywhere we go, here in Iraq and across the world, raising awareness about this situation, is fathers should not have to join ISIS just to keep their kids alive. That should not be the devil's choice that anyone has to make. And so thanks to you, we have been able to deliver 100,000 pounds of food to people all across that map that you saw in some of the hardest areas where ISIS is actively recruiting, actively showing up, actively shooting mortars into areas where our teams have been. 100,000 pounds of food is not all that it could be, but it's a lot. And it has done a great deal to keep bellies full and to keep dads able to hold out that one more day or that one more week in hopes that we can then help them turn the corner from just receiving aid to really getting their life back on track, where they're feeding their own family, and there's no reason to look to ISIS for anything, not even a drink of water. And so that's really what is at the core here. It's not just putting food in bellies, it's helping to stave off extremism and defy ISIS and poke them in the eye and say, this isn't going to work. You can't continue to take down cities by cutting off their food aid. And so the reputation and the success that we've been able to build in this has actually allowed us to go one step further. So that this week we've actively been contacted by the Prime Minister's office, our Iraqi partners, the UN, and we're helping to be the first, as far as we know, to charter a C-130 or a cargo plane of that variety, fill it up with tons of food, about 10 tons of food, and create an air bridge that flies over ISIS territory into the desert where no one else has been willing to go, and drop this aid into a secure location with the help of Iraqi Air Force, American Air Force, and to make sure that this aid gets to people who have up until this point been completely cut off. The last city, one of the last cities standing out in this Anbar desert, the city of Haditha, is one of the ones that we're particularly interested in and particularly trying to save, so that Haditha doesn't fall to ISIS like so many cities before it, all for lack of food and water and friendship and solidarity in this time. So you can imagine the logistics and the complications that come with working on something like this. We're very grateful for our Iraqi friends and partners who have made this possible. And we're very, very grateful for you for giving us the resources we need to do something that is really history-making in a lot of ways for this one small city in this very critical time. Right now, I want to introduce you to my wife, who's going to come and talk to you about some of the things that you've made possible on the empowerment front, helping us turn a corner from merely giving handouts so that women have everything they need in their own hands to start putting their lives back together. So this is my wife, Jessica Courtney, and she's going to tell you a few stories right now and just help hopefully give you a little bit of context for what's going on here. So, meet Jessica.
Hi everyone. I just wanted to thank you so much on behalf of all of the friends that I have been able to make and that we have been able to help by providing empowerment grants to them so that they can start businesses that they have had on their hearts or that they've done before, that they just really, even though they have been sent out by ISIS to new territory that they don't understand and they don't even always speak the language in their new homes, but that they have a way to make money and support themselves and their children on their own without having to wait for the aid organizations to come in. And the freedom and just the empowerment that they receive, especially the widows that we work with, is something that's life-changing for them. It's something that I can't express to you the look on their faces whenever they say thank you for something as small as a sewing machine, something most of us probably have in a closet packed under coats, in our houses. So I just wanted to tell you about one friend of mine. Her name is Abir, and she lives in a city about 45 minutes away from us. She has recently started a corner store where it's located in the garage of her house, and through a window in her garage, she can safely provide colas and candy and tomato paste, anything that you might go to your local corner store to purchase. She sells so that the people in her neighborhood can come and purchase it from her. And she's so excited about her business. And about 3 months ago, she started. She's doing really well. And after the first couple of weeks, she said, my goal is to save enough money that I can provide a freezer for my shop so that I can sell ice cream before summer comes. And I was just visiting her about 3 weeks ago, and she had bought that freezer and was able to sell ice cream. And she said that it was doing a lot to help her family, that it was bringing in a lot more money. And she's hoping to have enough to be able to send her children by taxi to school in safety this next year. So she was really hopeful about that and looking forward to the way that she was growing her business. Another friend that I want to tell you about is Miriam. Miriam is a hairdresser, and she has a beautiful salon. Thanks to your donations, we were able to provide everything she needed inside the salon. But she herself went and found the location for her salon, and she went to purchase everything that goes inside of it. It's really important to us that we don't just show up with items that people need or have asked for, but that they have a role in purchasing those items themselves. So we like to go with these women as they make these purchases and see what they think they need to start their business, because they know so much better than we do what it takes to run this kind of business. And so we were with Miriam a few weeks ago as well, and Miriam was telling me how excited she is about what she's been able to do. Her business is thriving. She lives in an area where there are a lot of young women getting married, and it's her job then to fix their hair and do their makeup and their nails. And she kept telling me how she's had this Max Factor training. You know, did I know about that? And all that was included in that training, and how the brides prefer her because she has this Western training. And she went on to say how great it's been for her and her son, and to tell me, please, if I meet any young women who want to do this as their job, as their empowerment role, would I please let her be the one to teach them? And she just wanted to spread and give back in any way that she could. And I was just overjoyed seeing her success that was made possible by a small grant that she's just grown into an incredible business, and now is doing so well that she wants to share her knowledge with others so that they can be blessed and do more as well. The last that I want to tell you about is a really special group of women to me. I get to see them more often than others because they live much closer to our house. But this is a group of Yazidi women who were up on Mount Sinjar back a year ago, last August, and they made their way to a small village right outside of our city. And in talking with them about these options, for a year now, they have been relying on other people showing up and bringing aid, shoes for their kids, showing up to bring them food every couple of weeks. They're just completely reliant on that. And to get them out of that, we have offered them these empowerment grants, but they said to me, we don't know how to do anything. We don't know how to sew. We don't know how to keep a salon. How can you help us? And a couple of the girls are interested in starting a salon, and so we're trying to work with Miriam to teach them how they can open their own salon here. And with the older women, we are teaching them a very historic craft from Iraq, making castile soap. So some of you may have heard of or used Dr. Bronner's soap. It's very similar to that. It's made with pure olive oil and water and eucalyptus. It's a very, very basic recipe that takes quite a bit of skill, but it's something that they were interested in because they can make it in their homes, and then they can take it out and sell it or send it out with their sons or other men in their family to sell and make money. But the idea that we would help them with something more than food has been really important to them, and it's a project we've been working on for a while. So we're hoping to have some available by Christmas, so save your Christmas money, and you'll be able to purchase the soap that these women have been working so hard on. One interesting thing about making the soap is it has to harden for a really long time, more than 6 weeks, and the women were a little disappointed at that, but once they've seen it and have seen the benefits of it, they're really excited to be making it. So we're in the process of making it, and soon we'll have some to sell. There's one more woman that I'd like to tell you about, and her name is Sakut. And Sakut is a seamstress from Tikrit, which is Saddam's hometown, and has been very overlooked for many years now. But because of ISIS, her family had to flee, and they had 50 people living in a small 2-bedroom house. I don't know how it was possible. When I have visited them, they all kind of huddle in the corner of one room, peering in a doorway, lots of young kids. But Sakut is incredibly gifted and talented with sewing, and anything that someone can explain to her or that she sees in a magazine or on TV, she can recreate. So she asked for help getting a sewing machine and going to buy the fabric, and she has created a job that she's been able to support those people in that house with her sewing. And she recently has taken on a student. Another displaced family has a daughter who wants to learn how to sew, and so that daughter is going to study under Sakut so that she can have her own business sewing as well. So I hope you've enjoyed these stories. It's been fun to introduce you to my friends this way.
So we're going to try something. It may not work, but we're going to try and show you a video of what this looks like in real time. So coming up next is a video that we're just going to give you a sneak peek at, something that no one else has seen yet, about these stories as told through the lens of one woman herself, about what it means to be empowered to start putting her life back together. This is Fadila.
تحبيها؟ اي كل سنة. طبعا هي الإنسانية فوق الكل. مثل ما هم إنسان، أنا هم إنسان، مثل ما أشوف نفسي أشوفهم. احنا كنا عايشين بالحصرية. وعندنا أملاك، وعندنا مساكين، وعندنا حلال، وعندنا سيارات. ضربتنا أمريكان. بداية الاحتلال هي راحت أمي فيها وراءها الحجية ماتت أمريكا ضربتها هناك. أختي اللي كانت ثمانية. وش اسمه عاد الحمد لله هذا ورجلي راح بحب وناسته. جموا الإرهابية هسه بالحال مسحوا بيتنا خلوه تراب. خلوه تراب. شتتنا راح المال والبساتين الحلق كلها راحت فقدناها. طلعنا ملابسنا بس. قعدنا عند هلال واليتامى لميتهم. اتمناهم يعني اتمناهم يصيرون بمكانهم وشهادتهم بدينهم، وهم احكي وياهم اللي الظروف اللي عانينا بيها اذا بمرور الزمن شافوا ناس مثلنا لا يقصرون وياهم. الله من كرم الانسان لازم هم نكرمه. الحمد لله والشكر تحسنت ما كان صفر والله العظيم، يعني حتى قبل اقول لك بس بقدي ما قدي انا من فضل الله، بس الحمد لله احنا الناس من قرة تمكين واحد اندلتنا، يعني شعبة الخبز مالتنا والتلانيذ زينه جاوبت، يعني خبز نظيف وابيض ومشينا شغل الحمد لله والشكر، وزخم عين الحمد لله والشكر. وفضل الله وفضلكم. الحمد لله وعندي ارباح صارت. والله فكيت يعني الاجره مالت البيت، يعني دار عندي. قمت اوفر من هذا الشهر ذاك الشهر. هسه الشهر يجي عادي الحمد لله ما خايفه منه.
Well, I don't know how that broadcast across the seas to you and how it looked and how it sounded, but man, I'm crying here in Iraq. The backstory to that wonderful woman Fadila and her sister is just way more intense than we could cram into a couple-minute video. But this is the story of so many women and so many men here across this country, and so we wish that we could produce this level of beautiful documentary on every one of the women and men that you've helped us help, but we'll have to just settle for a few of them along the way. But next time you're here in Iraq with us, please let us know so we can take you to meet Fadila and you can see what you've made possible in her life. And next time you see me on the road somewhere, let's talk more about the backstory of all that's going on in that family's life. It's an incredible, incredible testament to strength and hope and global brotherhood and sisterhood and all that we get to be a part of here. So thank you. I hope on behalf of Fadila and on behalf of Sukkot and so many more of these women, you will feel really proud of what you're making happen here. Now, turning a corner from this kind of empowerment where we give grants or small business loans to women or maybe a few men and help them start putting their life back together, I want to tell you about a different kind of empowerment that we're just now, as we come out of summertime, we're just now starting to launch. This is so exciting. As we are aiming to put 10,000 children across Iraq back into school. So just when your kids are going back into school, we're trying to do the same here for Iraq. You know, we've talked a lot about people being displaced. We've talked about ISIS driving people from their homes. But it's just mind-boggling what that actually means and like all the details of what it means. So last year we were talking about food and clothes and how to get people their vouchers from the government so that they could prove they were displaced and get on a government food system. How do we get people identity cards back so that when your son needs to fly to a heart surgery, he can prove who he is. And then winter comes and you spend all these months getting ready to just survive summer, and now you got to turn and you got to survive winter, and so it's weatherizing doors and windows and carpet and coats and boots and kerosene and heaters. I mean, it's just been one thing after another, and now here we are. A full year has passed, and many, many of these kids have not been in school, not one day since ISIS came to town, and now they're displaced. What you may not understand, and it's hard to understand without living here, is that you can drive 30 minutes down the road and be in a totally different language grouping. And so when ISIS pushes you away, it's not as simple as just go down the road and start over. Sometimes you're actually going down the road and starting over without even the language that you need, you know, to buy food in the grocery store. And so these kids now have been driven away and just surviving for the last year. We are feeling very intensely this statistic, this research that demonstrates that if kids stay out of school for more than a year, if they're not put back into school by the end of that second year, it gets incredibly less likely that they will ever get back into school. And if they don't get back into school, then they don't get the leg up in life that they need, and already having been displaced, they probably just resign themselves to their lot in life. And we're really looking at what we're calling a lost generation here across Iraq. Now we don't believe in lost generations. We don't believe that that's going to happen, and we're doing everything we can to make sure it doesn't happen. And so one of the things that we're really pushing back against, similar to the food thing that I told you before, is this reality that ISIS is out and among the people in various parts of Iraq. When kids hang out on the street, ISIS can be there, and ISIS or ISIS people or individuals with extremist type leanings know how to say the right thing like a gang recruiter. They know how to say the right thing against that group so that you might have some sympathy for their group. And so ISIS itself is involved in a kind of education effort, only where we would seek to bring people back together and bridge sectarian divides and create a pluralistic, multi-religious society. Of course, you know what ISIS's endgame is. You know, they want to drive people apart. They want to inculcate this extremism into the life of children. So these kids actually represent, as horrible as it is to say, future ticking time bombs waiting to go off in this country when they're released at some point in the future. And so we're not just talking about school. We're not just talking about helping kids where they are today. We're really talking about the future stability of this entire country. And so, again, we're trying to get 10,000 of these kids, boys, girls, north, south, east, west, Sunni, Shia, Arab, Kurd, Assyrian, Christian, Yazidi. We're trying to get all of them back in school. All of them. As many as we possibly can. Right now we're setting our sights on about 10,000. And with your help, we really believe that we've got a plan in place to get it done. What's harder maybe to understand is how school has all these follow-on benefits in the life of a child. One of the things that we're hearing, one of the things that moms are coming out of the woodwork and saying is, please, you have to get my daughter in school, please. The economic situation in our family is so horrible right now. And her dad loves her so much that her dad would have her married off, even though she's young, because he believes that the other guy would be able to take care of her better. And so moms are begging us, not because their husbands are monsters, but because as moms and dads, they love their kids so much and they're trying to figure out how to reduce economic burdens, keep the family together, keep their kids cared for, fed, clothed, safe. And again, we're just in this place where we're saying fathers should not have to marry off their daughters early, or choose to leave a child behind, or families not eat dinner that night, versus joining ISIS where you get all those things. And so putting kids back into school is one of these kind of surprising ways that we can keep families together. It shows that girls have worth. It shows that we're standing with your family. It shows that we're standing with your community and we're not abandoning you. It allows us to establish relationship, which allows us to establish some of these empowerment type grants and maybe get dads and moms working. And it allows girls to be gainfully employed or occupied throughout the day, reminding dads that they have a future. This isn't just about expediency today, but these girls aren't good for nothing. They're actually good for a lot, and they're equal to the boys in their house. And we're trying to push that agenda with many amazing female activists across this great country. But guys have a similar kind of dynamic going on, where guys hang out in the streets of Kirkuk or Tikrit or Baghdad, or certainly out in some of the more affected areas of the Anbar Desert, where guys hang out in these places too long. ISIS knows how to infiltrate these communities and how to turn us against one another and prey upon young men who don't have anything better to do, who don't have jobs, who are sick of the government that's oppressing them, and so on and so forth. And so this 10,000 kid effort is also about defying ISIS, denying ISIS the ability to recruit more young men to fill their ranks and send them out to die. So we're extremely excited about this opportunity that is before us right now, and we just are really hopeful that we'll get to talk more with you about this offline if need be, and excited for you to see more about this campaign. Now, turning a corner a little bit to go outside of Iraq, many of you have been passionately and excitedly watching what's going on with our work in Libya. For the last 9 or so years, we were focused exclusively on Iraq, and God knows that Iraq required focus as we were building our network and building our reputation here across the country. But about a year or two ago, we started getting a lot of intense invitations from around the world, from Yemen and Egypt and Libya, to export and expand what we were doing in Iraq to benefit children in other parts of the world as well. And so even as ISIS was coming on the scene here in Iraq, we were undertaking very deliberate efforts to expand our work with our partners, our surgical partners, globally. And that has most poignantly and immediately come to a head in the country of Libya. So Libya has been in this civil war ever since the 42-year dictator Muammar Gaddafi was overthrown. This was another one of those ousting of a dictators that was kind of popularly supported and part of the Arab Spring, something that the U.S. came in under Obama, President Obama, and helped really push forward in a lot of ways. But it seems like we don't learn our lesson very well. That we have not apparently learned that when you take a strong man out of power, you have to stay the course in these kinds of places and help them put things back together. And so now, sadly, Libya is a mess. It's in shambles. It has been sanctioned by the UN. There's a civil war going on, and much of the international community has turned its back on Libya. So listen to the Libyan people themselves tell the story. They feel punished for the things that Gaddafi did, for the reputation he earned for the country. And yet, after having spent time with them there, the people on our team who have been a part of their life and known these Libyan friends say this just couldn't be further from the truth. The people of Libya are beautiful, wonderful people, and we should do everything we can to support them. Sadly, you probably only know Libya because of Gaddafi and because of the immigration crisis that keeps threatening Europe and things like this. But one of the things I'd love for you to walk away tonight about Libya, thinking about or knowing about, is not just military things and ISIS beheading 21 Christians on a beach a couple of months ago, but we'd love for you to go forward thinking about a little kid named Ramadan. Ramadan is one of the little boys that our team met on the last trip to Libya that so many of you very graciously supported in very large sums. Many of you were just so generous, and we're very grateful for you. And so I hope you got a chance to keep up with Ramadan's story on the blog, but if you didn't, I just want to introduce him to you very briefly. Ramadan was not like many of our kids who was born with a heart defect. He actually acquired it a little later in life. Probably got some kind of strep throat type virus. It caused him probably to have a fever, and that created a problem in his heart for him. And so he acquired this heart disease. And then, unlike being a little baby who might get a heart surgery when he's 14 months old, Ramadan's like 14 years old, and so he's so more fully aware of what's going on around him, even as his mom sat with him and tried to comfort him throughout this situation. But over and over again, he had kind of had this offer, and we had extended to him ourselves this offer to get his heart surgery. Ramadan, do you want to have your heart healed? But being 14 and being afraid and seeing everything, being cognizant of what's going on around him, he just kept kind of pushing off and saying, no, I don't want to do it. He's actually the man of the house. And so you got to wonder what goes through a boy's mind at that age when he's contemplating going under the knife and what it would mean for his mom if he weren't to come out alive. And our good friend and partner surgeon, Dr. Novik, stepped in and said, Ramadan, I can make your heart better. I can make you feel better. The whole team is here for you. We can really help you in this situation. Ramadan, do you want to have your heart fixed? And so for the first time in all these years, Ramadan finally said yes. And so Dr. Novik and the team helped put Ramadan under and took him into surgery. And it was a relatively easy thing, and Ramadan came through beautifully and underwent the recovery that so many of our kids do. And we're really happy to report that Ramadan is recovering well and is a beautiful, beautiful young boy with a healed heart now. Thanks to so many of you in this time when ISIS had just made world news by beheading people in Libya. You pushed in and you said, no, we want to save lives in Libya. So we're so grateful to you for that. Now, going forward from Libya, I just want to introduce you to something else that's happening, again, behind the scenes right now. We rolled out Libya to you a couple of months ago because we knew we needed to help bring you along our journey of what was happening with regard to our expansion and this invitation to go around the world. And so we wanted you to see Libya first, a place beset by terrorism, beset by conflict and war. But behind the scenes, we've been doing and negotiating, having these same kinds of conversations in other parts of the world. And so tonight, or today, where you are, we wanted to announce and celebrate what you've made possible. It's actually more than a Libya expansion. We actually find ourselves now on the cusp of a very global expansion to places like Nigeria, where we have our partner team right now on the ground providing life-saving heart surgeries, even as the main thing you may know about Nigeria is Boko Haram and their allegiance to ISIS and the Bring Back Our Girls campaign and this ongoing conflict. We're going to bring you new and better stories from Nigeria as we plant our own flag of peace there over the coming months and years. Places like Iran. You know, this Iran deal has come out in the last couple of days, and it's been highly controversial, obviously, but in the background, even as Iran was still sort of indisputably on the list of American enemies, we've been working to see what we could do to be there and to bridge a divide between Iran and America, again, between Muslims and Christians, between anywhere that we see these conflicts. You know, a place like Iran is one of those great places that we're so excited to be because of you and your ongoing support. Coming soon, and even over the last couple of months, we've been working in Pakistan. You know, depending on where you come from and what channels you follow, you may know nothing about Pakistan. You may know that it's, you know, somehow related to the Taliban, or you may know that it's one of the places that is significantly involved in persecuting Christians right now. These are the kind of places we want to be. We want to help write a new story if at all possible. We want to push back against dark things if at all possible. We want to jump first to love others where maybe no one else will go right now. And that's what you're making possible here with us today. So we're so grateful, and just wanted to begin bringing you along and kind of preparing you for what's coming down the line. Preemptive Love is actually a global movement of peacemakers who want to go to the hardest places and love in the hardest conflicts, show up where no one else will, and then ultimately get out of the way by empowering other people to do the job that they were made to do, whether that's life-saving heart surgeries or putting your own family back together. So that's a bit about our global expansion. That's really the great sort of cherry on top of everything that's been happening behind the scenes right now, this momentum you've given us to take your love and take this message of peace that you have in your hearts and that we have in our hearts, to take it around the world. Now we just have a couple of minutes left. I don't know what the best way is to close. I want to respect your time. I'm not sure if it makes sense to do some of the questions that you have right now. I'm going to defer to the team a little bit. Let's see what we think we should do here. Guys, if you'll take us off the slides, I'm going to fast forward our slides a little bit. And given the complexity of some of these questions, why don't I'm going to wrap up with a kind of just a summary statement, and then we'll come back to the questions for those of you who can afford to stick around a little bit. So as you wrap up your time with us here today, just kind of in way of wrapping things up and putting a bow on it, I don't want you to just feel like this is an info dump. I want you to understand how you can engage and how you can help us go forward. And there's really three main ways that we want to present to you today. First, we just want you to use your voice. We want this not to be about Preemptive Love Coalition, that organization over there. But we really want you to start thinking about how we are the Preemptive Love Coalition. You, right there. You are the Preemptive Love Coalition, and we are the Preemptive Love Coalition, and we're all in this together. Because you've got conflict where you are. You've got people who don't love their neighbors where you are. And we're trying to learn together how to become a global movement of peacemakers. So we want you to use your voice. Promote this work. Promote this message and this idea of preemptive love. We've got people on the screen here who have painted things and crocheted things and made all kinds of beautiful, beautiful things, had garage sales. There's all kinds of different ways that you can have a fundraiser or do advocacy or share stories that bring this goodness to bear on your community and your neighborhood. Use your voice. This isn't just about what some people are doing across the world. It's about what you're doing right there in your neighborhood where you sit today. So use your voice. That's one of the big things we want you to do. Share. Share means take these stories about Pakistan that many of your friends may not have heard before, about Muslims serving Christians in Iraq, about Christians serving Muslims in the US, about Boko Haram, about ISIS and the nuanced and varied ways that we talk about ISIS around the world. Take this stuff that we produce every day for you and share it broadly across Twitter and Facebook and newsletters and forward on these messages to your friends. We can't rely on mass media to educate us rightly about so many hard, difficult, nuanced issues around the world. But we want to be the place that you can, we want to be the people you can rely on to get these kinds of stories about conflict and peacemaking and how to love in very difficult, hard times. And then lastly, we want you to give. I mean, there's 10,000 kids that we're trying to get back into school. And it's a big plan, it's a bold plan, it's exciting, it's risky, it involves working with people that are maybe sometimes unsavory, but I'm telling you, it is going to be amazing if we can do this together and pull it off. We need you to give. The amount of money that came in already has been exciting. This is going to go above and beyond, and so we're really asking you to dig in with us, give to our Back to School campaign. Let's put 10,000 kids across Iraq back in school. Let's deny ISIS the right to push girls into young childhood marriage, to recruit men, young men off the streets. Let's build into the future of Iraq today by sending these kids back to school. And let's keep providing heart surgeries. This work in Iran is exciting. The work in Nigeria is exciting. Pakistan and other places that we'll be telling you about soon. If you love Ramadan's story, if you love Ali's story, if you love the way that conflict and risk and love and medicine can come together, bring enemies together, bring hearts and lives back together, it only costs $650 to help us save a life. So we're just going to entreat you, please keep loving kids like Ramadan, keep loving kids like Ali, and keep giving with us, even as you share these stories and raise your own voice for us. So, for those of you who need to jump off, thank you so much for joining us on this call. We'll spend a few more minutes hanging out, answering a few questions, and thank you so much. God bless you guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Stay tuned. We hope to do more of these going forward. Thanks. Bye. Okay, for those of you who are sticking around, let me pull up some questions here and see how we're going to go about doing that. I haven't gotten any of the messages that the team has been sending me along the way. So let me read through some of these right now. I'm just reading some of this. Do you have any role in rescuing the young girls being abducted by ISIS and used as sex slaves? Yes, we do have a role in that. It's a little circuitous because some of these guys who are involved in this most directly, as you can imagine, require anonymity. They require at times a real covert operation to infiltrate and insinuate themselves back into ISIS-controlled territories. But we are providing, broadly speaking, support for some of these guys in some of these communities so that they can keep their work going. Whether that means we're supporting them with housing, or we're supporting them with food, or we're supporting them with business startup grants, or we're supporting them just by virtue of the fact that we're a Western organization standing, encouraging them, edifying them on as they go do this. We do have a role. Obviously, I myself am not trying to infiltrate ISIS-controlled areas and do anything like that, but we're aware of the situation. We try and keep an eye on it, and we have been looking for ways to be more involved. But it's one of those things where sometimes doing less is actually doing more. We can actually do more damage if we try and make a lot of noise in that space. We might actually hurt what's already going on very skillfully without our input. So we walk that line. We're helping. We're equipping and aid and stuff like that is helping others do it, but we're not doing anything like that ourselves. Looking at some more of these here. Just picking randomly here. What is the balance of need and or resources spent between remedy missions and ISIS relief efforts currently? What do you think that will look like in the next 6 months to a year? Okay, so that's from Brian. Thanks, Brian. I hope you're still hanging around here to hear the answer to this. I would say that the allocation of resources right now is probably around 50-50 on the year between remedy mission and direct to aid recipient ISIS type relief. Now, a lot of what we're doing on the remedy space is actually more of a cash flow kind of thing. So in some of these countries and in some of these partnerships, we're working with groups, whether they be a government, like in Libya, or another aid organization or a charity, as is the situation in Iran and Nigeria. In those cases, we may not actually be the final payer on all the services provided. The government may be the final payer. But we may have to provide all the airline tickets, for example, for the entire medical team to get into the country. And it may be that once we provide those medical tickets, the government starts paying us back. Once they can see that we showed up, we're serious about coming to hard places and doing hard things, then they'll believe us and they'll start initiating a payback. Now, you can imagine some of these places are hard to work. They're difficult, bureaucratic governments. Payment doesn't always arrive on time. And so maybe we're told that we're going to receive payment on day 1 of landing in Nigeria or day 1 of landing in Iran. And day 1 will come and go, and month 1 will come and go, and month 3 will come and go, and we still haven't been paid back. And so a lot of what we're doing right now as we expand globally is just building up the cash flow, the liquidity that we need to keep all these programs going around the world. So whether it's in the countries I've named, or Iraq, or countries that we've yet to roll out, a lot of this is about cash flow and playing kind of a financing role, not merely a final payer role in the lives of these kids or the lives of these governments and programs. On the ISIS relief side, that's not the case. It's buying food, it's chartering, the C-130 and buying 10 tons of food to go inside. It's hiring staff. It's paying cash grants to people who Jessica talked about, like Sukkot and Abir and Fadila. So the ISIS money is really, in a lot of ways, it's a new thing for us to be spending so quickly across so many different categories. But that seems to be going very well, and the reputation that we seem to be earning in various sectors continues to surprise us as we get these calls from high offices to go deeper and invest more heavily. So thank you for the cash, the liquidity, the resources that you've given us to respond so quickly in so many different areas in the last couple of months. All right, in being a good student of history and recognizing the dramatic underreporting of many issues happening on the ground in Iraq, are there certain media sources or staple books that could help supplement a more holistic, accurate, and more compassionate understanding of the complexities of ISIS? Wow, what a question. We love you for thinking like that. Thank you. News sources. Read locally, first of all. It's difficult to read CNN, Fox News, and call that a diet. That's not a diet of good international media. So one of the things that we highly recommend, find Iranian-based English news sources to read about Iran, to read about Iraq, to read about the region. As it relates to Iraq, we recommend Al Monitor, Al Jazeera. There's some Iranian papers we read. There's Kurdish papers we read. We read international, English-based papers like The Guardian, Independent, BBC. We do, of course, read CNN and Fox. We read a lot of think tank type sources as well. So not just the 600 to 800 word article, but we read a lot from all the major think tanks: Carnegie, Brookings, American Enterprise Institute, Hudson, white papers from Harvard and Yale, and any big name kind of think tank based out of New York or DC or London has a lot of value in their perspective. So we read broadly across those kinds of things. I won't name any one book, but I will say find good history books. Like, you can't understand ISIS today without understanding the 30-year reign of Saddam Hussein. You can't understand ISIS today without understanding the way that the U.S. CIA overthrew the democratically elected Mohammad Mossadegh in Iran in 1953, reinstalled an oppressive king called the Shah, and how that created and fed into the Islamic Revolution of Iran in 1978 and 79. Yeah, we have to get a decades-long view for what's going on. We can't just kind of drop in at the American invasion of Iraq and and play a partisan game that acts like that's the only thing going on right now. So I would just encourage, whatever you do, read decades-long history of what's going on and let that inform how you think about things. One more question. How are you preemptively loving ISIS? I love that one when I saw it ahead of time. How are you preemptively loving ISIS? Well, one of the ways that we're preemptively loving ISIS is by providing life-saving medical care to people indiscriminately. One of the doctors that we most love and relate to, and some of our team hang out with regularly here, he exhibits what actually a lot of our doctor friends across the country exhibit, and what our medical partners and staff and friends exhibit, and that is a willingness to look at the patient in front of you as the patient in front of you. To not ask for identity card, to not ask where you're from, to not ask what your religion is or what your background is. And one of our doctor friends, who's really nearby to where I am right now, was even known in the height of some of the fighting around his area a couple of months ago for these big bearded guys to come in with bullet holes all through their body. They'd probably just been out blowing up or attacking his people, his peers, the guys that he would hold up as the hero. And when these obviously ISIS guys show up on the scene, and other doctors around the space found themselves conveniently busy or unwilling to get in, or suddenly had an appointment, or would even obstinately perhaps and very pointedly say, I'm not serving that guy, he's one of those ISIS monsters. I can tell, look at his beard, look at the bullet holes. This guy, whom I won't name for his security's sake, but he jumped in and he said, I'm going to care for them. I'm going to love them. These are the kind of people that we're training. These are the kind of people that we're investing in. These are the kind of people whose hearts that we celebrate and nurture. Going beyond that, when Matt, my colleague and dear friend, was out 15 miles past the checkpoint in no man's land just a couple of days ago, there's a high probability that he mingled in and around ISIS-type recruiters. When our partners and friends just days ago were out near the city of Haditha, this besieged city that we're trying to build the air bridge to with the cargo plane, they were told, we need to get out of here. Something doesn't feel right. It seems like these ISIS types are watching us. And so they gathered their information, wrote down their reports as quickly as possible, and pulled out of that small camp where they were. And just as they left, the camp was mortared by ISIS, which likely means that there were even people in the camp, perhaps, feeding intel back and forth to the ISIS-type positions outside the camp who had the weapons. And so when we talk about going in the no man's land, when we talk about going where no one else will go, and when we talk about preemptively loving ISIS, this is what we mean. We're not, this isn't theory to us. We are trying our best to be indiscriminate with our love, recognizing how naive that can sound, recognizing what the repercussions of such a life might be, but genuinely believing that there might not be any other way to destroy our enemies than to make them our friends. There just might not be another way. And so that's what we're banking our life on right now, is that by going to the hardest places, whether it's Libya or Iran or Pakistan or 15, 30 miles into the Anbar Desert, we're going to be able to hold out an open hand of love with resources that you've made available to us and love everyone around without discrimination. So thank you so much for sticking around this extra few minutes to do a little bit of question and response. Of course, you can always reach me on my personal email, jeremy@preemptivelove.org, jeremy@preemptivelove.org. If you have any questions now or later after the call, feel free to call the office, 254-400-2033, 254-400-2033. You can email me, jeremy@preemptivelove.org, and we'll be happy to take this conversation with you offline. And huge honor and joy to do this with you. Thanks so much for everything you've made possible here. Use your voice, share these stories, and please give to help us get 10,000 kids back in school. Thanks. God bless you guys. Bye-bye.